divide and rule. It worked at every point of time.
Correct.
You're saying, right? It worked when in the Wahhabi and the Dehlvi period. It worked during colonial period. Now explain this to me.
So the first thing that I have tried to show through the book, which I hope people have latched onto, is all the Wahhabis were Sufis. Shah Waliullah Dehlvi was a sanad-carrying Sufi, which means he was ordained as a Sufi into the Sufi order. His father was a Sufi. Ahmad Sarindi was a Sufi. A lot of people who led people into riots in Bengal were Sufis. Proper riots. And effectively, this missionary arm of this particular mindset has played a huge role both in softening as well as wielding the stick as well as the sword. That much is very clear from the documents. So it's very difficult for me to buy this Bollywood presented invention that when you think of Sufi, think of these dervishes with the long hats and the long robes just swirling around constantly in ecstasy. Sorry, history is much more than this people swirling, and it's very difficult. The bloodbath that they've caused is astounding. So all these people who led the Wahhabi movement were Sufis. Let's be clear about that. That's one. Second, what am I trying to say? I am not denying the fact that the British indulged in the divide and rule policy. My qualification is, it's not divide and rule policy, it's exploit the divide and rule the policy.
Yeah, exactly what I was trying to get to.
Right?
Is that what you were saying is that this division process had started
Long ago, it has always existed.
Yeah.
And therefore, when the British realize that when there is a particular discord, that can be used to their benefit to also prevent or let's say put some kind of a fetter on claims of a separate nation or a nationhood or asking for home rule. What is the principle behind this? The British was very comfortable providing autonomy to those communities or those colonies which could lay claim to the status of being a single nation. And the definition of a nation is not what we understand it today. Definition of a nation is either you're bound by a single language or religion or race or whatever it is. There has to be something which is homogeneous across the board. So therefore they said, first of all, Hindus and Muslims are not a single nation. Even within Hindus, you're not a single nation. That's the extent of their argument. It is around that period that Radha Kumar Mukherjee and everybody starts writing to say why Bharat as a civilization must be seen different from Europe's definition of a nation. So
that's in your first book.
That's in my first book, right? Now, when he senses an opportunity in the Muslims of Bengal and Assam who are willing to help him create a separate Muslim majority state or Muslim majority province as a counterweight, now I'm asking myself, this common bindi, the common sari, the Rabindra Sangeet or whatever Sangeet existed before that, all of that should have played a role. We end up focusing too much on the softer cultural aspects without asking whether this has had the power to prevent a political tide. When the chips are down and when a crucial decision is to be taken, have all these mattered? I'm saying they haven't mattered. This is peacetime discussion. This is the discussion of the affluent and air-conditioned atmospheres drinking wine, saying, oh, this is the greatness of the composite culture of this country. When it mattered, it did not. Okay, did it matter when Operation Searchlight was going on in 1971? No, it did not.
No.
Right? Okay, let's assume for a moment.
For those who don't know about Operation Searchlight and Tikka Khan, please Google it and read about it because it is the most horrific incident that has happened in South Asia, which the world has ignored. That genocide that happened then, please Google it and read about it because it's something that the Western world completely forgot and Bangladesh was not strong enough to talk about it. And the rest of the countries in Asia, including India, did not talk about it. So do Google and read about it. Sorry, Sai.
So let's go before 1971. If this cultural, let's say, impact was so strong, you shouldn't have had an Eastern Pakistan. But you did. Why do we forget that Bangladesh was indeed East Pakistan? That means they decided to go ahead with that particular decision. Notwithstanding the common linguistic affinities and whatnot, they said, we are throwing our weight behind this set of people who subscribe to the two-nation theory. That's one. After 1971 and after the creation of Bangladesh, has it seen greater protection for the Hindu minority there? In stark contrast, the Hindu population in Bangladesh has come down sharply. Every day you hear instances of rapes, forcible conversions, atheist bloggers being killed, so on and so forth. So the Bengali affinity or the Bengali commonality isn't strong enough to prevail over the Islamic identity. Let's be very clear about that. Their ummahhood reigns supreme. that is established by the partition at 1947. Did they say, we don't wish to live with Pakistan, we don't subscribe to the two-nation theory, we'd like to merge back with Bharat in 1971? That's not their decision. That's not the decision post 1971. In fact, one of the ambassadors, I remember reading this as a school-going kid, effectively told this to Bharat, do you expect us to be grateful to you for eternity for 1971? This was the tone of Bangladesh in late 90s and early 2000s. When it was not the Bangladesh of even today, which has some kind of an economy to speak of.
But why do we expect gratitude?
We don't expect gratitude.
Yeah.
We are asking for decent treatment of Hindu minorities there. We are asking for some kind of restraint on illegal migration. We are asking for some kind of restraint on the export of cows from here in an illegal fashion at the cow slaughter that happens at Bharat's expense. Because Pashudhan may not matter to you and me, but it matters to the farmer. We have recently seen about 10,000 cows being repatriated from that particular part, and that border is so porous. In fact, there's a specific paragraph where I say that the infiltration into Assam has to be traced to the partition of Bengal, and the antecedents of the two-nation theory start from 1905 at the very least, which directly is traceable to what is happening in Assam at this point. So, when we look at Assam, so I think in 2019, just before the lockdown, at the fag end of the year, Professor Faidan Mustafa and I had a public debate on the NRC in Assam, whose results had just been announced. And this debate was organized at Nalsar, of which he is the Vice Chancellor. Now, I basically said, you want to look at NRC and Assam independent of the issue of Bangladeshi illegal migration. I'm sorry, enough literature says that's not possible. You need to look at it as a whole. Maybe 30% of the audience scoffed at it. So in part, I'm responding to that. I'm saying, here's the literature, deal with it. So when a country such as Bharat, as it exists today, is the product of multiple bloody vivisections, why do we look at each of these instances in isolation without understanding what are the larger dots to be connected here? Perhaps that is the central thesis of the book. Please learn to connect the dots.
Right. Connect the dots when you talk about that, that Indian Muslims stayed on in Pakistan, stayed on in India. Those who stayed on in India, pragmatism was a major reason.
Right.
Many times it was like there was no option.
Correct.
Right, to go. I had Asaduddin Owaisi on the podcast recently, and as you know, he's very vocal about his identity as an Indian and as an Indian Muslim.
Right.
Now, he said this, and I quote it. He said, "Main is mulk." Reason I asked him also is because people call him the modern day Jinnah in India. It's a very rude way of saying it, but then
I think Jinnah was better.
Okay. So they said that. So he says that मैं इस मुल्क में इसलिए हूँ क्योंकि मेरे बुजुर्गों ने ये जिन्ना के टू नेशन थियरी को ठुकराया था. So he talks about staying on in India that his parents did, his ancestors did as a matter of choice,
right,
not as a pragmatic move because of financial reason or whatever. They were financially well off, his family.
Right.
So tell me about this, that why you have a different take on this.
Well, the floodgates will open. So I hope I will exercise my free speech to the fullest possible extent.
Absolutely, please do.
Right. So let's go to the first limb of your question, which is on why did I make the statement that they stayed back for reasons of practicality and pragmatism? The good part is, a lot of these people said this themselves. So there's a fantastic interview on YouTube of Maulana Madni where he's speaking to a Pakistani journalist. And he was asked this very same question. Why didn't everyone move there? What was the reason? He said that you're looking at a population which has stayed in this part of the world for several generations. They had their properties here. And they had their masjids here. And most importantly, he alludes to something which is very crucial. Most people don't even talk about it. At the time of the discussion of Pakistan, even those Muslims who opposed the creation of Pakistan weren't doing so because they wanted to be part of Bharat, but because they believed that this entire land belongs to Islam. And therefore they said, why are you settling for 1/3 of this when the entire thing was supposed to be Mughalistan? So it's not that we belong to Bharat, but the converse is Bharat belongs to us. Rather, Hindustan belongs to us.
Because it had been conquered.
Conquered. And that reference is constantly there in every speech of Syed Ahmad Khan where he said, we have ruled this place for 800 years. That's where this myth comes from his speeches. He says this over and over and over again. So when someone tells me, no, they stayed back for patriotic reasons, yes, but patriotism towards Bharat, no, patriotism towards Mughalistan. That is what they say.